Welcome to the Bioptimizers Awesome Health Podcast. And now here's your host, Wade T. Lightheart.
Want awesome health? How about doubling your energy? With our free Awesome Health course, you can get a new video and lesson every single day for 84 straight days. The course covers everything from optimizing your digestion, nutrient intake, correct health issues, including weight, skin, energy, immune system, and so much more. The course could easily be worth $200 or $300 for, and yet it's 100% free when you go to bioptimizer.com. That's bioptimizers.com. Once you're there, just enter your name and email to get the first 3 phases of the Bioptimization report. You'll get the report immediately and begin getting your video lessons each and every day from there on in. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. It's Wade T. Lightheart from Bioptimizers with another edition of the Awesome Health Podcast. And I am pumped, excited, and delighted today to actually have the opportunity to introduce you to one of the living legends in our industry, Dr. Udo Erasmus. You might have had his Udo's oil at some point in time. He had a remarkable transformation with his health due to some toxicity that he experienced a long time ago, which led him on a quest to resolve, chemical poisoning, essentially. And we had that interview on a podcast earlier, long time ago. I'll put that in the show notes of the exact number. But for those of you who are just meeting Udo today, I would like to share that we're going to talk about total global health based in nature and human nature. And, Udo is a wealth of information and perspective, and he's been in our industry, the health and human nature industry, for a long time. His pioneering work.
More than twice as long as you.
Yeah, his pioneering work in health and wellness started over 40 years ago. As a prominent voice of healthy fats oils movement, Udo raised manufacturing standards of food oils, including flax oil. In 1994, he co-founded the Udo's Choice supplement brand, a global leader in cutting-edge health products specializing in healthy oils, probiotics, digestive enzymes, and greens. He is also an accomplished author of several books, including the world-famous Fats That Heal and Fats That Kill. If you have not read that book, I encourage you to do so, because when he introduced this concept to the world, you have to realize is that fat was essentially determined as something that you didn't want anything to be part of. And yet it is a component of essential function in just about everything in your body that you can imagine. And he's been championing the cause for, as we identified, over 40 years, which is pretty impressive. And he joins us today from his Vancouver home, which I have the great honor of bringing him on the podcast. Udo, welcome to the show.
All right. Thanks, Wade. Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Well, we caught up recently at the CHFA Expo West. It's the Canadian Health Food Association trade show. And at the end of the show, we just happened to bump into each other, which was lovely. It's been a few years. And we got into a spirited conversation about a lot of things that are outside of the mainstream discourse, but are probably so important that if you are listening to this right now, shut off all your distractions and pay attention, because here's someone who's lived it, done it, transformed his health. And it's an uncalculatable number of people's lives have been transformed by this gentleman. And he's here to share some of his insights on human nature. So welcome to the show, Udo.
Yeah, here we go. Human nature.
So we were talking about this, in today's world, it's with social media and, the access to so many varied opinions and political debate and left, right, center, everything you can imagine, and everybody's seems to be distracted from essential what it is to be a human and how to be a functional and healthy human. Mm-hmm. We talked about particularly human nature and a teachable field of health. Like, why is there such a disbursement of opinions in this particular field, which is so essential to every single component that you're interested in?
I know, it's crazy. We can literally find every opinion under the sun without any differentiation between what's true and what's BS.
Mm-hmm.
And so then when you read it, if you don't have background, like solid foundational background, you don't even know how to tell what's true. And then it just goes into wherever your traumas are, and then they crank up your trauma responses, right? So and just because you had trauma and it triggers your trauma response doesn't mean it was true, right? So how do you know? And why do you have trauma in the first place? Because something in you, no matter what you've been through, rape and war, no matter what you've been through, something in you was never, can never, and will never be traumatized. And what if you had access in your own observation, in your own experience, to that in you? Because that would give you a foundation for living in a crazy world where everything that is loose is loose. You know, for everything that can change will change. And you can be okay with it if you have a foundation within yourself that you can rest on, that never changes. And that is peace in its nature, and that loves you unconditionally from within, 24/7, lifelong, without ever taking a day off, without ever going on strike for a raise, without wanting, you could say, I hate my life, and your life will still love your body unconditionally. So like, wow, that's pretty good stuff. And why would it not make sense that was number one educational course in whatever education we go through, and it taught in grade school, and practices to get in touch with that were taught before typing, right? Or before whatever other crazy things we learned. Why wouldn't that make sense? Because part of the reason why we're so crazy is because we're out of touch with what in us is not. That's why we're crazy. So now we depend on what comes at me. Oh yeah, is that true? Oh, is that true? Oh shit. Oh, and then it's like anxiety, overwhelm, depression, it's like, why are we living like that? When love is on our nature.
Right.
Wow.
So I would like to, obviously that's a deep place of wisdom that you've arrived to in your life. Mm-hmm. How did you personally get to that space of understanding and clarity that so many people don't even know exists, let alone aspire to, and how do you make it available to the world?
Well, it was a track. I was born during the Second World War. So I was a refugee kid when I was 2 in the winter of 1945. We were fleeing out of Poland westward on horse-drawn hay wagons on dirt roads, mothers with young children. And the communists were chasing us in tanks and trucks. And the Allies, which that's us. We like to think of ourselves as the good guys. They were using us refugees as target practice, shooting at us from planes.
Oh my God.
You didn't read that in the history books? Oh yeah, that's because the winner writes history.
Wow.
Right? And so it was really intense. I remember hunger. I remember fear. I remember not knowing what I could trust, what I could depend on, not feeling safe. And I was very shy. I was like this, duck hide. And we ended up making it out by the hair on our teeth. And you know how much hair is on your teeth, right? Mm-hmm. And when I was 6 years old, I listened to adults in Germany have arguments about really trivial things. They seemed really trivial to me. And it always made me uneasy because they were so intense about it, right? And I listened to one or more of these arguments, and the thought came to say, man, there must be a way that people can live in harmony. And this little cocky voice said, and I'm going to find out how, not knowing how complicated everything is, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's been my driver all my life. And so what I did, so the way you do it is you can start by having a war and surviving it. I'm kidding. But something needs to tell you it's got to be able to be better than this. Mm-hmm. Like you could be really fed up with the craziness that you're surrounded by, right? But something has to get your attention. And then you have to ask questions. What is so for the question was, how can we live in harmony? That's a good question, right? Because it's against everything that's going on, but in the end is what everybody actually wants. So how can we live in harmony? Okay, that'd be one. Then I was like, what is life? Because as a kid, we had a little woods and we had a little pond. We were on a farm where we were. And I'd look at all this stuff and it's like, oh my God, like all this stuff is alive. And it was like, what is life? I wanted to know what is life. And I didn't want to know it because I thought I could get a job out of it. I wanted to know it because I wanted to know more about it, because I already appreciated it and I wanted to appreciate it more. So when it came to doing studies, I did lots of experiments as a kid, banged things together, broke a lot of stuff, right? Mm-hmm. But like a born scientist, I wonder what, what? Wow, I wonder why that flower is purple, right? I mean, silly questions like that, right? Why do the needles fall off? Why don't needles not fall off trees in winter and the leaves all do, right? Like, just like, and so when it came to science, I got into physics, chemistry, math, which was boring because it's so theoretical. And then I went into biological sciences. I want to know more about life. But my question was, what is life? That was my question. Because I'm alive and all this stuff is alive. But what is life? What is the thing that makes it alive? And you know what? I took about 7 years of biology. We never learned about life in biology. We learned about form and function. So I know a lot, and it's good stuff to know, form and function. I always thought we would get a beaker of life at some point. We have a beaker half full with something liquid and shining, and we say, wow, there's life. So I thought of it as something liquid and shining. Then I went into psychology, study of soul is what that means. We didn't study soul in psychology. We studied beliefs, thoughts, and emotions. Then I went into medicine because they call it healthcare, and I wanted to know what health is. I only lasted a year there because we only learned about disease. I went to the dean. I said, I came here to study health. What is health? You know what he said? We don't know. We're working on it. And they're not even working on it because they're always focused on disease. And that's like saying, well, I want to know what light is, so let me look into the darkness until I know what light is. Do you know what I mean? If you don't look at what you want to know, then you're not going to get to know what you want to know. So, and then we were told, as a doctor, you should always sound as though you know what's going on, even when you don't. And that was the end of my medical career, seriously, because on the farm, we call that lying.
Yes.
And I wasn't going to make my living lying to people. Somehow that just didn't sit right. So I went back into biochemistry and genetics. I was really good at genetics, love genetics, because you're in a control room where everything happens and genes get turned on and genes get turned off, and different things in the environment turn them on and turn them off and turn them up and turn them down. And I found that fascinating, but I still never found out what life is. So I didn't get life, I didn't get soul, and I didn't get health. And I was always clear, I wanted the good stuff. Health is the good stuff, right? Life is the good stuff. I didn't want to study death because death isn't the good stuff. Life is the good stuff, right? And then I got into psychedelics, and I was lucky enough to work in neurological research, and they had some Sandoz LSD, the good stuff from the Swiss pharmaceutical company. I took 60 micrograms, which is a very small dose. And I laughed and cried. I was rolling on the floor. We were listening to Mozart, and I was laughing in time to Mozart's melodies, right? And the tears are running down my cheeks. And it struck me as the funniest thing I had come across in my life. It was 1964. So I was 22 years old, okay? Funniest thing I'd ever come across, that everything that I was so studiously looking out in all my studies was already fully present inside of me. That struck me as the funniest joke. It's a joke about God hiding, because he gets tired of everybody complaining all the time. And so they say, oh, go hide in the Mount Everest. And the little kid says, no, they'll find you there. Oh, go hide in the Mariana Trench, which is like really deep, right? Oh, no, they're finally there. So finally they say, well, where do you think I should hide? He says, why don't you hide in the heart of human beings? They're never going to look there. And that's pretty much how we live our lives, right? Whether you call it God or you call it life, is like, that's, to me, those are synonymous, right? And anyway, so then I got into that, and then I got into reading all the different scriptures because of all the teachers. It was the Buddhas and the Jesus and Krishna and Lao Tzu and Huang Po, and there's a bunch of them. They were as close as anything I ever, and I was very wide in my reading interests. They came the closest to describing human nature and how to live. And not by making rules like Moses did. Because like the masters only had one rule. What was the rule? Love. Love self, love God, love your neighbor as yourself. One rule. Okay, that's not hard, right? And why did the masters only make one rule? It's because they knew, they were smart. They were really smart guys, right? Not like our politicians who make rules and rules and rules and rules and rules that never ends, right? They were smart. They said, if you don't follow the law of love, you're going to break every law, every other law we make at your convenience. And if you follow the law of love, you don't need any other laws. Oh, but then you have to take that seriously. So what did he say? Kingdom of heaven is within you. Okay, so God lives in heaven, and Jesus lives in heaven, and Holy Spirit lives in heaven, and that's within me. Oh, well, geez, maybe I should have a look. So then he said, first seek the kingdom, and then everything else will follow. Everything else will fall into place, or you'll have the more abundant life, really, So how many people do that? It's within me. I've been told that's the thing I should give priority to. And how many people who have read that and believe that and say, yeah, this is the truth of the truth of the truth, actually do that? Because how would you do that? Well, you would have to bring your focus that's either wandering in your head all the time in your thinking, or out there somewhere looking at something that's changing, because you get attracted to that, right? And that's for survival. So instead of having your focus out there all the time, you want to bring it back into the space your body occupies and find out what is there physically, energetically, awarenessly, and mentally. Mentally, we kind of look some, but we don't really look at the whole picture. And then what will you find when you do that? Because if you actually want to know where the good life is, it's already inside your body, right? That was the joke. That was the joke when I had that LSD trip, right? What does it feel like? What does it feel like to be alive? What does the love that is unconditional within you for every one of your 60 trillion body cells, what does that feel like? Right? Because it's there and it's running this show. Life, love, Christ, whatever you call it. Running the show, well, what does that feel like? Because I would like to experience that love. And then I might be a little less dependent on that everybody loves me out there, because not everybody will, right? And then from that, when I feel loved and cared for, then I can look at the world and say, okay, where can I help? Because I'm cared for, I'm taken care of. It's not about me anymore. Where can I help? What needs to be done? And how can I make the biggest splash, the biggest positive splash for good in the time that I have on earth? And when that happened for me, because I asked the questions, it changed my life. My life is really simple because it really isn't about me. Because life takes perfect care of me. I don't have to worry about, am I going to wake up breathing? Taken care of, right? While I'm sleeping, life is taking care of the fact that I need to breathe about 6 times a minute. Right? Some people 12, but it's all taken care of, right? I don't have to run a crank on my kidneys to filter my blood to get the pee out, right? all taken care of. You know, after I swallow, I don't have to digest the food, all taken care of. And the absorption of the nutrients, all taken care of. How does my body know, or somebody, how does somebody in me know that there's a cell on the inside of my left ankle that needs a molecule of folic acid and then delivers it there? How does it know? Right? Life takes care of it. We don't even know what the mechanism are. There's supposedly there are what do they call them? Molecules that guide the nutrients to where they need to go. I forget the name of it, but no, but something knows, and it takes care of it. You know, how do all the proteins get into my toenails? Right? Me as the personality, you know, who's blabbing right now, I don't know how to do that. How do I repair my skin when I bang into something and I scrape my skin? How does that happen? I don't know. I mean, we have some, you know, we have a few biochemical pathways that we've said, oh yeah, this is involved, but we don't know what is the control system that gets the food from the Brazil nut that I ate that ended up chewed up in my stomach and then burnt by acid and then went its way through the digestive tract, where all the nutrients I could get from it were pulled out into my body. How does that happen? And you can't tell me.
No.
You know, no, at least not exactly, right?
No, I think what you're
And there isn't
really...
a professor, and there's not a professor or a politician on this planet who can answer that question.
Yeah, I think one of the things that the modern world has kind of got overly focused on is the mechanistic models of the Newtonian paradigm.
Yeah.
You know, so before we had kind of religious indoctrination, and then that descended into, well, what is truth, as the church became corrupted over time. So then it was like, okay, that gave birth to the Enlightenment period, which is, well, there's got to be a source of truth. And we created the scientific method, which is mechanistic reductionism. So one guy says it's the enzymes, and one guy says it's the blood transport, and the other guy says it's the, you know, and it just keeps, and then you get into subatomic structures if you're a physicist, and there's all these things, and everybody's got a story, a little slice of the pie, but no one has the absolute cause.
Yeah, exactly. And we know things that are involved in various aspects of it, but we don't know who controls it. We don't know what controls it. We don't even know where conscious comes from. People, the mechanists say, oh, the brain creates consciousness. So then you have to ask, well, if somebody had a near-death experience when they were in surgery and they saw themselves floating just below the ceiling, watching their body, listening to the talk between the surgeons, and then, you know, their heart stopped, and then they were dead for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or sometimes half an hour. And then for some reason they flip back into their body, and then they tell the doctors all the conversations that they heard while they were dead. How do you explain that as a byproduct of brain function? Well, you can't. And the truth is, if you look at the Big Bang, the energy came before matter. And if you look at sunshine, you know, and creatures on Earth, well, the sunshine came first, and the sunshine activated electrons between atoms, so they bonded, and that created chemistry. The energy came first. Even if you're in love with somebody, long before it's bedtime for you guys, right? There's an energy that passes between you. So everything, energy came first in every case. Mm-hmm. So the mechanistic, it's almost like the mechanistic viewpoint is a way to justify control when we need to live by trust.
Beautiful articulation. Now,
yeah.
Funny, we shared a lot of the same books and influences and teachers.
Yeah.
And I found that when you talked about that, and And again, the age-old questions like, who am I? What am I here for? What is my purpose? Where did I come from, and where am I going? These are the big questions that no science, no university, none of these places can illustrate.
No.
And I became a student, got into a deep meditation process, and became a student also of Dr. David Hawkins, which he.
Oh yeah, I read all his stuff.
Yeah, talked about that. We used to go see him. I used to take groups down there, and phenomenal individual. And what he called is what you're speaking about is he classified it as non-linear dynamics. In other words, outside of the mechanistic paradigm. And he, of course, was a scientist and a nutritionist and a
psychiatrist. Yeah, so he was brought up in the paradigm, but he had some experiences that were so outside of, like I have had too. I literally have seen.
Same here.
I've seen a being made of light after Christians treated me really badly, like judged me harshly, told me I was from the devil and Antichrist, and kicked me out. And all I did was ask a question. I said, like, it must be possible to see God and live. So, because there's stories in the Old Testament of people who did. So why is it possible for them, and why is it not possible for us? And they weren't special human beings. They were just happened to them out of who knows what was going on in their lives, right? Society must be possible. So this guy got so angry because I thought we were just going to share stories about our search for truth, and we would all leave the evening enriched. And they had come. They called themselves the Jesus People's Army. It was a very
it's so ironic, right? Like, what army was Jesus associated ever with?
Well, and should have been a warning to me, because army was not a good word in my lexicon, because I came out of a war, right? So, but I missed the cue, because I was so sure we were just all going to share stories, and it was going to be a beautiful thing, and what I knew about Jesus was beautiful, but I didn't. He didn't beat people up, and he didn't judge people, and he just told people how it was, and I found that really cool. So anyway, so I went to clear my head out to west coast of Vancouver Island. It's called Long Beach, not in California, but nobody on the beach, just me and the logs, and somebody had draped plastic over a log, and I said, okay, here's my hotel. And I went there to clear my head, because I was really confused, because I expected, it was what I got from these Christians was so unexpected. And I went there with my heart completely open and trusting. And it was like, it was such a shock, right? And it's just like, I just really wanted to know. And so in the middle of the night, this being came, made out of light, no labels, not drug-induced. Just middle of the night, bolt upright, there was this being. No label, no conversation, but the being embodied a message. That's the only way I can explain it.
Mm-hmm.
And I could put words to that embodiment. I am come not to judge, but to love. Is there a better summary of the teaching of the Master? I have not found one. I am come not to judge, but to love. Now, what if we actually lived that way? Come not to judge, but to love. So we don't people up because they have a different view from us. We just love them as human beings because they're alive.
If that was the case in the world, I had actually just recently got in my possession a book that's an outdated, it's out of print book called The Path of the Masters, and it starts off with a whole discernment of all the various religious doctrines. And then he says, and the masters don't teach this.
And the masters don't teach it?
They don't teach any of that stuff. And
the masters did, but the institutions formed from them didn't.
Yeah. So in that, in his illustration was, we would not need a political system, a legal system, a regulatory body, all of these agencies that kind of run and their version of the world, in that if people operated from the position of love, the rule of one, essentially, that none of those things would be needed. because we would all be operating from this singular idea. And I have this concept that I use, and I don't see humanity as separate. I see it as a singular organism throughout all of time.
Right.
And we're all like little cells
and,
in the human body, complete,
right,
which
and
you could also take into everything else if you want to expand upon that.
And include all the plants, animals, and microbes in it.
Yes.
Yeah. And by the way, it's true because sunlight is the power that runs everything.
Yes.
On this planet, right? It's
yes.
a fraction of sunlight, filtered through 93 million miles, then filtered through the atmosphere, then filtered through green plants. And the fraction that remains activates electrons, forms bonds, molecules. We eat the molecules. In our cells, they break up. The energy is released. Now we call that solar energy fraction life, or life energy,
yes.
right?
Yes,
and that life
exactly.
energy is the master in the body. It runs everything. It weighs nothing. It runs everything. Well, you got the master in your body. And then some people think, oh, he's Jesus, and Jesus in heaven, and heaven is God knows where.
Right.
When he said heaven is within you. Right? And
Correct.
there's the energy. And there's where the science and the spirit stuff actually completely come together. Solar energy is life energy, is the master in the body, is the CEO, is the resident expert that you can ask how to live your life. And they'll give you a better answer than the guys in Ottawa or in DC. Right? And
Agreed.
and you can call it Buddha. And so some of them talk about Buddha nature, and you can call it God, and you can call it divine, and you can call it the Son, and
Christ consciousness, whatever you like.
And you are a child of God, and there isn't only sons of God, there's also daughters of God, but God itself does not have a gender, because it's a power. It's a formless power that runs all the structures, right?
Beautifully said.
And so we live in heaven. We live in heaven on earth, and we're going around. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? And we're looking everywhere except where it is, in us. So,
this is obviously for some people that's a profound, almost insane concept with where they might be in the world. And obviously, you've gone through your own journey of education, and we chatted briefly beforehand, and you talked about, if you look at the contemplative or meditative process of turning one's attention inward to that awareness, what has allowed you to continue to retain and expand upon that awareness, and how did that guide you through your life to do the things that you've been able to accomplish?
Right. Well, so that being that I met on the beach in the night after the curse, right? And I have to thank those Christians because they set me up for a beautiful experience, right? It's almost like they made that happen. They forced that to happen because I wanted to know, I was very sincere. I really, 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 really wanted to know, right? But they triggered it. They got me into the desperation that leads to sincerity, and desperation is sometimes a good thing for creating sincerity, right? So then I feasted on that, and I started saying, "Oh my God, there's the life I didn't get to study in biology. Oh my God, there's the soul that I didn't get to study in psychology. Oh my God, that energy is perfect health. So there's the health I didn't study in medicine." Right? Because they're all materialistic, so they don't deal with that. They don't want to look at that. The materialists don't want to look at that. And then the institutions that were named after the masters, they didn't really want to be that, because the masters all said, be that. They didn't want to be that. They just wanted to control people. And then how did they do that? Well, they took the message of love and said, oh, there isn't just love, there's also curse. And if and then they focused more on sin than they focused on salvation, right? So the scientists got it wrong because they wouldn't look at it, and the religious institutions got it wrong because they turned it on its head, right? And the truth is, when you look at the science and you step over the fact that we never studied life, and you say, okay, so what is life? oh, well, it's the sun, that's the power, that's the energy. Here's how it ends up on the earth, and here's how it ends up in the molecules, and here's how it ends up being broken open in the cells, and here's what's running everything. Weighs nothing, runs everything, right? And unconditional love for the body. And by the way, when you feel that love, that shines out of you as inspired purpose, helping, doing what needs to be done. There was a time when I wouldn't do what I knew needed to be done because I couldn't see how it would take care of me, right? Because I felt so not taken care of. And then it's like we're all running around trying to get ourselves taken care of. And we're doing it by all stupid ways that don't work. When in fact, something is already taking care of us and all we need to do is tune in, right? Now, is that scientific or religious? It's neither. It's just that everything we learn is by observation, and everything we observe, we have to focus on. And when we focus on it, we get to know it. And that's that's the way it works. And the scientific method is only as good as the intent of the wielder of that tool, right? So if you want to cheat in science, it's easy. There's people saying now, like the past editors of the biggest medical magazines, Lancet, English Journal, whatever it's called, New England Journal of Medicine, and there's like 4 or 5 of them. They say that between 50 and 80% of everything is published in those journals is bullshit, is lies, because the pharmaceutical companies have, what do they call that? They basically run it. They basically buy what gets published.
Yeah, I thought I heard.
So then you have a scientific method that everyone says, oh yeah, scientific method. Oh, it's going to solve our problems. Not if you say, well, we're just not going to look at that. That's not going to help. And if you misuse the method. Now, in Ayurvedic medicine, the doctors all had to do some kind of a stillness practice where they literally get out of their head, where all the blah, blah, blah is, and out of the emotions, where the blah, blah, blah stirs you up to anger and to, right? They had to go beyond that, had to go deeper, had to go into even beyond the love, the unconditional love that life has for your body. They had to go into the awareness out of which the love comes, or of which love is a condensation. This is what the quantum physicists suggest, right? Awareness is the foundation, and then awareness concentrates into love, that's energy, and that flows, and that concentrates into matter. And then if you blow up an atom bomb, you're turning 13% of the matter into energy, so it's obviously doable that way. And of course, we don't know how to blow up energy into awareness, right? This is like, how do you do that? Nothing holds it. You can't have a container on it, so you can't control it. So you have to surrender in this case or let go into some of these truths, because the scientific method has limits.
And now for a Bioptimizers fixed digestion tip. Turn cultured foods into superfoods. Raw fermented foods like sauerkraut and low sugar, live yogurt can be good for you, but rarely have enough of the right probiotic strains for therapeutic benefit. So here's a way that you can turn them into superfoods. What I do is I get some raw sauerkraut or a healthy yogurt. Ideally, it's grass-fed or coconut-based, and you can empty 3 caps of P3OM into a container and mix it up thoroughly. Leave it at room temperature for a couple of hours before putting it back into the fridge. And what's going to happen is these probiotic levels will be multiplied. In fact, it doubles every 20 minutes. And then what you're going to get is you're going to have a food with strong proteolytic activity. To learn more about P3OM and why its patented strains make it the strongest probiotic available, go to www.bioptimizers.com.
We can all learn by observation.
Yeah.
I think we've identified that. And so I would like for perhaps you could share your process of observation and how that's guided you in your journey and your career and your life's purpose.
Okay, so there are two questions there. Number one is, what do you want to observe? Right? And what most of us like to observe is politics. That's why everybody's blah, blah, blah about politics. And we're making politics bigger, even when we dislike it, because we're still giving politics attention. Why aren't we giving peace attention? Why aren't we giving love attention? Why aren't we giving the basics, the fundamental basics of eating, sleeping, pooing, peeing, drinking, breathing? Why don't we give those attention? Right? So the one is, what do you want to observe? And the second one is, I can't remember what the second one is. Second.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, and so what do you want to focus on, and then how do you focus? And that's hard, because we're very good at moving our focus around in the outside world, right? Because up there's my ceiling, and there's a lamp up there, and there's a corner on a bookshelf, and I have a book there's called The Hidden Life of Trees and Dolly, and there's a clock on my wall that the Irish distributors for my products gave me as a gift. And there's a window to the east there, and there's a window to the west here, and I got carpet on the floor, and your body needs an oil change. My new book is lying over here. So like, it's really easy to go everywhere really fast. So then you say, well, why don't you, so you're really good at focusing. And why is that? Because since you were born, you've been practicing focusing on this and that, getting to know the world. And there's anytime something moves, you're attracted to it, because you got to find out, is this friend, is this foe? Do I run? Do I fight? Or is this irrelevant and I can ignore it, right? And that's a survival thing that creatures have, right? So it's just same. The animals are also attracted to change in their environment for the same reason. So, but there's nothing that forces you to bring your focus inside, out of the world of change, into this stuff that never changes. Like love never changes. It's completely constant. When somebody says your heart is fickle, they're actually wrong. Your mind is fickle. It changes all the time. Your heart is completely stable, always filled with love. Okay, awareness is stable. It's the container without dimensions out of which the entire universe comes. And its nature is peace. So you have love and peace in the core of your being. How do you bring your focus there? Well, it's hard. Except for one thing, heartache. You know heartache? You know, yes. This uncomfortable feeling in your chest. And so when does it happen? Well, somebody dumps you and you didn't want to be dumped. You get heartache, right? Your grandmother dies and you're really close to her and you didn't want her to die. Heartache, same feeling, completely different trigger. Somebody betrays you. Something doesn't turn out as expected. You know, so we get heartache all the time. I've got 10 pages of trigger words for heartache. And we call heartache by whatever the trigger was, rather than calling heartache by what its nature is. So what is the nature of heartache? Your grandmother dying didn't, they say trauma. Trauma causes heartache. That's a really big in the therapy industry these days. And trauma informed and trauma this and trauma that, right? And I thought about it and I said, you know what? That's actually not true. Trauma will trigger heartache, but trauma did not create or cause the heartache.
Right.
So what caused the heartache?
The interpretation of the events.
Nope.
So go ahead.
When you were in your mother's womb, by the way, you were in heaven. That's just the paradise garden, right? Why? Nowhere to go, nothing to do. Everything was provided and it was pretty damn safe for a little, very vulnerable creature, right? You didn't have to breathe. You didn't have to go to the bathroom. You had no thoughts. You had no language. You were just a little biological creature that was being created from inside by the life energy inside of it that came from the foods that mother ate, using the structural building blocks for body construction that came from the foods that mother ate. Okay, so you're in there. So what are you doing? Well, there's nothing to see. Maybe a little bit of light if she has her shirt off and sitting in the sunshine with her belly, right? So you might see a little bit of light, but nothing formed, nothing you can grab onto, right? Nothing to hear other her gurgles and her gas, and you see, yeah, but there's no interpretation there because there's no structure by which to interpret it, because you have no experience into which to fit it, right? Because you have no experience except being this. You don't even know that you're there, because there's not much to feel, because you're in a water tank. I call it the Buddha tank, right? So not much to feel, and not much to taste, because the amniotic fluid is boring if you taste it for 9 months running, right? So there you are. So where's your focus? Well, it's not, got nowhere to go. So the focus, your focus, is at rest, inside, in its source, in life, and beyond that, in awareness. And so what you are when you're in there, you're a little Buddha in deep meditation, or a little master in deep meditation, or a human being in deep, deep, deep meditation. 9 months. And you would think, like, now you see, wow, imagine I had to crawl into that space now and hang out doing nothing for 9 months. God, that would be so boring. But you're not bored, because when you actually go into that boredom, first of all, the boredom is exceptionally peaceful. And if you love peace, you won't be bored. You'll be in bliss, right? And so you were just hanging out in the bliss, in the love, in the peace of the energy and the awareness that are the essences, that are the individual and universal essences of your existence. So there you were. Did your heart ache in there? No, because it never got separated. So then you came out, and then all hell broke loose, right? Because you had to get to know the world, and oh my God, it's like, and you had to cry for your breast milk, and you had to cry for your diaper change, and you had to cry for your blankie, and and then you had to get to know the words, and then use your words, tell me what you need, and then you had to become very good at living in the world. And some people call that gained the world, lost the soul, right? And so in that process, you went from your focus being present inside, absent outside. You went more and more of your focus being present outside, and slowly disconnecting and becoming less and less of the time inside. And then you got good at that, and then you got the distractions of, oh my God, what's that? And oh my God, what's that? And in all of that, there's no question of what's in here. You're not even aware of yourself learning all those things. You're just learning those things, kind of without foundation, right? And heartache is caused by the gradual disconnection of your focus from the love and peace that are the core of your existence, and getting lost into all of the things that go on in the world of change. That's where heartache came from. So heartache is caused by your disconnection from yourself, and you can't blame that on anybody. Some people like to blame it on their parents. No, that's a natural thing. That's part of the human process, to get to disconnect from self, getting to know the world. And then you say, okay, but heartache is an incredible gift. We don't like it because it's painful. We don't like it, but it's the call to come home. Actually, so heartache is like thirst, right? Thirst makes water relevant. Hunger makes food relevant. Horny makes sex relevant, right? Tired makes sleep relevant. Well, heartache makes coming home to the love and peace that is the core of your nature relevant. And so, but we don't know that, because I don't know of a single culture that actually explains heartache that way. Right? So then if you feel heartache, so I say to people, when you feel heartache, you don't have to look for it because it happens often enough. When you feel heartache, sit with it. Take time, be by yourself, feel it, acknowledge it, don't judge it, just feel it. Might have some tears, feel it, be with it, accept it, and maybe be grateful for it because it's taken you out of your head and already put you close to the core of your being. And then you got to go that far deeper is where your connection is. And so I would say you want to do a practice of getting in touch with the love and peace that is your nature. Start with heartache. I don't know. I've given talks on heartache. I have never taught. I only ever had one person who said I never feel heartache, and halfway through our talk he said, "Oh, I do feel heartache sometimes." So I've never met a person who doesn't know what heartache is. Why is that? Why is it that common? And there's so many different things that trigger it. Well, it must be something really, really central to human existence for it to be that common, right? So basically, heartache is the call to bring your focus back home inside, where your sacredness, your life, your peace, your fullness, your true nature, your godliness exist. Whatever you call that. And is this science or religion? It's not anything. It's like, this is a fact of existence. And imagine if 8 people understood that message and did that work. What kind of a world would we live in? There wouldn't be a war in Iran, in Ukraine. Ukraine war takes place in perfect peace. There's peace everywhere in the universe. Our access is in a core of our being, but from there, that goes out to infinity. I know that as an experience, right? And so okay, peace is everywhere. The whole universe comes out of peace. A galaxy explodes, the peace is not affected by the explosion of the galaxy, okay? So there's peace on the battlefield. There's peace in the warriors. There's peace between them, around them, above them, below them. And if their focus was on peace, they would sit down and say, okay, you're from Russia, I'm from Ukraine. How do we help each other have the best possible life? And how do we make sure that our children are safe and they get what they need, and all of those simple things that we need as human creatures get taken care of? But that's not where their focus is. Their focus is, you're my enemy, I'm going to kill you. And the other ones, you're my enemy, I'm going to kill you. Just like the Republicans and Democrats, you're my enemy, I'm going to kill you. And then they try to figure out ways to trip each other up. Even though at any time, the option to bring the focus to the place where everything works is 100% open for every human being on the planet. What I'd like to do, if I had my druthers, I'd like to make that messable known to all 8 billion people on the planet at the same time. We'll probably take Elon Musk's satellite system, right? Because then the idea is, okay, yeah, because if I know it, if you and I know it in Vancouver, well, that doesn't help some kid even in Nova Scotia, but in Indonesia or in, a native on some territory they're living on, or, so how do you get a message like that is actionable? How do you get that out to all of humanity all at the same time? Because then you can do pretty good change. And in the meantime, I'll just do what I can. I like to live like that. Doesn't matter what goes on or who's in government or what kind of stupid things people do in places. There's only one way to live, and that's from the heart for me, right? And I'll do that as much as I can. And with time, I get better. And to finally get to your question, to answer it, which is, what do you do? Well, when this vision that I had of the being made of light that said, I am come not to judge, but to love, when that started to become older and a memory, I said, I want to live in that experience. How do I live in that experience? And that question took me to a guy who was 14 when I was 30. And I heard, and there was some things that happened that made that meeting happen. It was like pretty cosmic. And when I went to see him, he said, he talked for 2 hours. I remember one sentence. He said, the peace you search for in the world is within you, and I can reveal you that peace. And immediately I said, well, I'm 30 and you're 14, and what's a 14-year-old going to teach me? Because I've been around. Pretty arrogant, right? But then I was like, okay, but I'm really interested in peace, because I came out of a war, so peace was on my mind a lot, actually. And I said, okay, I'll check him out. If he actually can do it, I don't see how that's possible, given he's 14, but if he can do it, I wouldn't want to miss it. And if he can't do it, I'll just keep looking. And so I learned a method, and I thought the method was too simple, because we'd made it to the moon, which was really complicated, and we hadn't made it to peace. So I figured getting to peace must be more complicated than going to the moon. All right? It's good logic. It's completely crazy, but good logic. So I said, okay, he said, give it a fair chance. I said, okay, I'll give it 6 months. He didn't say what a fair chance was, but he said, give it a chance. I said, okay, I'll give it 6 months. I promised I would do the practice, so I'll do it for 6 months. And he recommended an hour a day. I couldn't even sit still for more than 10 minutes, ever. 5 minutes, 10 minutes. So I was living with the woman, and we had a very rocky relationship. I would come out of the bedroom. She'd be in the kitchen. By that time, she got up before I did. I would say one sentence. She would immediately take the opposite view, and we'd get into an argument. And I get heated, and I get heated, and I get more heated and more heated. And I would always get to the point where I really wanted to agree with me, because I was pretty insecure, right? I always got to the point where it's like, I'm going to belt her, or I got to leave the house. So I would go out of the house, sit on the logs. We were living in Colorado at 9,100 feet, way up on the mountain, and it was beautiful there. And I would go out, I would sit down on a log, I would do the practice for 5 or 10 minutes. That's as much as I could do. And I'd look at this. We argued about that. That was so trivial. That was just as trivial as the stuff I complained about when those kids did it, when those adults did it when I was 6 in Germany, right? Well, that's so trivial. And I got to the point where if I did the practice before I came out of the bedroom into the kitchen, I wouldn't rise to the bait, because I would feel a little more settled in myself, and it wasn't so important for her to agree with me. And so by the time 6 months was up, I said, well, this works. So I've been doing it now. In August 9th will be 53 years. Wow. Every day. Of all the things I do, it is the most important. It's the most important because of what I get from it, which is it settled me down. It gave me access to the foundation that we kind of all need, right? So it gave me access to that. And living from there, I don't have to react to everything. Living from there, I can always suck back and say, okay, well, what's the most constructive way to to deal with this situation if I have to deal with it, right? So I've been doing it for a very long time. Awesome experiences, love my life, and see hope for every human being, because that same thing I'm talking about that's in me is in the kings and the beggars and the mass murderers and the politicians and all the people you love and all the people you hate. Same, what do they say? The sun shines equally on the just and the unjust. I like that, right? And life supports or takes care of the body of every saint and every sinner, unconditionally. right? So there are people in jails who've heard the same message of the practice I do, completely changed their life around. And he actually does a lot of work in prisons around the world and with rebel factions. They get to a point where something needs to change, and it changes them. And they go from being, 14-year-olds with guns to going and talking about peace to their friends and their families and the people in their community. Difference, all it was is a change, a shift in the focus for those people from what they knew that was destructive in the world to something that is peaceful in their own being. Right?
Indeed.
That is so cool, right? And it's in everyone. That's the point. The point of it is but it's also in the trees and the animals and the microbes. It's the same solar energy that runs everything. And that, if you want to call something holy, sunshine is holy, right? When it's inside your body running your whole show, it's actually holy. It's sacred, right? And actually, when you look around, like if you can feel the sacred in you, you can look around and say, everything is sacred. What we say about it may be kind of stupid because we're not in touch with it. But actually, this whole thing, and it goes like, wow, how is it that dust and water and air and a little bit of sunlight can become a cherry tree, or can become an Udo, or can become a Wade, right? And then run this incredible complexity to have the human experience, because water doesn't laugh or cry, and solar energy doesn't have dreams, right? And but then they get mixed up in a very particular way by a very particular force that has like 14 billion years or probably longer in the development, and come up with this incredible thing that we haven't even scratched the surface to really know. And probably will not get much further in knowing if we don't take the time to make getting to know that the focus of our attention, at least part of the time.
Beautifully said. Now, you quickly referred to a new book. You want to, before we wrap things up, you want to talk about your new book and how this is, and I think I want to clarify something for our listeners is, if you understand, if you've read Udo's books or taken any of his products, what he's actually described is essentially where his mission and his understanding and his expertise has contributed to society by providing some of the elements that can help you heal yourself and get closer to that source energy you were discussing. So what is this new book? I wasn't aware about this. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah.
Sometimes when you capture books, you get into the mind stuff.
Yeah.
But I think what's underlying the words is where you're coming from, and it adds extra energy and oomph to the message.
So when I wrote Fats and Oils was my first book. It's called Fats and Oils. We then updated and expanded it into Fats That Heal, Fats That Kill. And in the last chapter 91 of Fats That Heal, Fats That Kill, and by the way, it doesn't have 540 pages like yours does. It's only got 454 pages, which is the number of grams in a pound for but that's completely irrelevant. So 454 pages. So the last chapter talked about the love stuff, the deeper human nature stuff, because I was already doing, I published that in 1994. Wow. And I started doing my practice in 1972. But I never talked about, like, that experience I had on Long Beach. I never talked to anybody about it for 31 years. Yeah. Because it was my question. It was private. The answer was private. There was nothing in that experience that said, go out and tell the world. So it was just for me. And that didn't change until 9/11. And 9/11, we were out whitewater rafting. So we saw the planes hit the towers on television before we went, but we had a date with the river, so we had to stop. Otherwise, I would have been sitting in front of the tube, for 3 months straight, watching planes hit towers, right? And nothing was affected. Out on the river wasn't affected. The sky was not affected. Trees were not affected. The boats were not affected. So I kind of got a distance from it. But what I realized, the take-home for that for me was discontent people. And why are they discontent? Because they're disconnected from the contentment in the core of their being. So discontent people will always spread discontent. And if people who are content and know what contentment is, and I'm one of those people, if we don't do more to spread contentment than they do to spread discontent, guess where we're headed? And that just became like a really practical thing. Oh yeah, I got to find a way to talk about this. And by the way, why we can have this conversation is because in 2001, after 9/11, I started trying to figure out how to talk about this in a way that isn't religious and that isn't scientific and that isn't more BS, but to actually talk from the experience and ground it and make it relatable, right? And I'm pretty much cutting the edge of getting dissed by people who don't like religion, but I'm not religious either. I'm talking about experience. And I frankly think the religion is responsible for most of the problems in the world because of what it did with the message. And maybe not just one religion, but when you get an institution, first they do a service and then they serve themselves and then they become corrupt and just serve each other and their buddies. And that's pretty much happens to all institutions, educational, government, and so ultimately the citizenship that creates the nation begins for you in your experience of life, of living on the planet, of your creativity in making it and keeping it beautiful, right? So when I wrote the book, I wrote it for the 1% of the population who's really interested in health and maybe who has some science background.
Can you bring it up and show us a copy? Can you get the new book?
Yeah. Oh, the new one? Yeah.
Yeah,
the old one.
You can do both, but bring them both up if you could. That'd be great.
Okay. That didn't take long.
That was fast.
Okay. So there's fats that heal, fats that kill. No comma. There's no comma. See that? No comma. They always put commas in it. If you look it up, then you might not find it because the comma is anyway. So that was, and then we've sold probably about 300,000 copies of it.
Wow.
And we did that because I hit the road for 15 years, 6 months to a year, no, 6 to 9 months every year on the road in 40 countries. And every talk I gave 4 talks some days, or I'd give 3 talks and 2 media. I mean, I was just like going crazy. I've given probably 10,000 talks. 10,000 talks is 34 years, a talk every day, including Saturdays and Sundays. So I've done a lot of talks, right? And then we sell 2 books at one talk and 5 books at another talk. And then I did a radio show and we sold 300 in British Columbia because it was a pretty popular show. And, so that's how we got to 300,000. Wasn't the publisher who did it. The publisher was really small. And I always wanted to write a book that was maybe more street level, less scientific, more accessible to people. And that's what Your Body Needs an Oil Change was meant to be. And I didn't get it done. I wanted to done it way back, like in 1994 or so. Should have been done by 2000. I never got to it because I was really busy doing all this traveling and stuff. So I finally got it done. And it's morphed a little bit it's kind of like an update. It gives you the basics in a way that's not as technical and not as detailed as Fats That Heal, Fats That Kill. And it's kind of across an introduction for this other stuff about human nature that I've gotten really interested in. So it gives you the facts on the oils, but it also gets you some pretty thoughtful information about about human nature, total health based in nature and human nature as a teachable field, being the classroom in which that learning will take place, right? So this is not like go on the bench and somebody blabs at you from the front, but how can you study the beauty of your existence, the magnificence of your being, and get to appreciate and get to experience the beauty of your own existence, even if you have a wart on your nose and there's a hair on that wart, because the beauty is not skin deep. The beauty is in the experience of life itself. The purpose of life is fulfilled not in words and not in certain things happening, but in you being fully present in all of your being. That's where your purpose is fulfilled. That's number one purpose, which is to enjoy the gift. It's an incredible gift made out of dust, water, air and light, right? Incredible gift. And then the second purpose is help where you can. But don't miss the first purpose, because then you screw up the second purpose anyway. So that's your body needs an oil change. This is the proof. So they put a cross here so I can't sell it, but it's just like your body needs an oil change. And
is there a release date? Is there a release date for that coming? Or
it's out. It's on
out.
Amazon, yeah, and you can print on demand or get the ebook version.
Beautiful. That's
the ebook version has the references linked in the text. So from the ebook version, you can go directly from the text to the links, and I guess that's, for some people, that's a cool thing.
It's pretty awesome what we're able to do nowadays with technology.
Yeah.
So that's a great place, I think, to wrap this up. That was beautifully articulated, and thank you so much for sharing from that deep space. I think that was really powerful, and some people might not understand that someone who has such a great background in history would actually where that emerges from. So thank you for sharing.
Well, it actually came out of, I started with oils because that was the most confusing area. Then I got into digestion because I think digestion is the second most common screwed up area. Either you have diarrhea, or you're constipated, or you got stomach ache, or you're burping, or you're throwing up, or you're farting, or there's always something going on because there's so much going on in your digestive tract. And I got into digestive enzymes, probiotics, like you do, right? This is like obviously a huge area of benefit. Digestive enzymes, probiotics, fiber, and bitters. And then I got into greens, because greens is the foundation of everything. So we made them portable so people could take them on the road with them, because people travel so much. And then I was asking, so what else affects health? And the answer that came to me when I sat and asked the question was, everything affects health. And that was the beginning of me saying, you know what? I need to do a book on total health based in nature and human nature, and a book on human nature as a teachable field, because those are the two things that are most important in the lives of human beings, but we don't give them the importance. And I think we need to, because if we don't, we're probably going to destroy ourselves probably within the century. We're that crazy, and we're that close to world wars, and it's really crazy.
It is.
And the whole time we're doing that, we could be living the most incredibly beautiful lives.
Absolutely.
So anyway, that's your body needs an oil
Is there any
change.
place where people can find out more about you, connect with you, or that sort of
UdoErasmus.com. It's a mess. It's under construction. We're redoing everything. And and the book is in health food stores pretty much in 40 countries. And in some of the chemists in England sell it. And anyway, I haven't been paid for my work for a year and a half on the oil. That's a whole other story, crazy politics and disconnection from self. Got to be involved in that too.
Right.
And
right.
but because it's a good product and it really works. I just keep talking about it whenever it's appropriate.
Well, we'll be catching up for matcha very soon. We'll follow up with that.
Yeah, beautiful.
Looking forward to that. And for all our listeners, really take the time to dive into Udo's work. It was a transformational aspect in my own journey early on in my career, way back in the day when I first came to Vancouver back in 1994 and was working at a vitamin shop and discovered your book.
Oh yeah.
And
where was vitamin shop? Where?
I was working at the Canadian Sun Vitamins in the old Hudson Bay building.
In which city?
In Vancouver.
Oh, that one. Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So there was your book, and there was Dr. Balch's prescription for nutritional healing. Do you remember that one?
Yeah, Balch was a fixture. Yeah.
Yeah. So those were very impactful books on my perspective, and provided a foundational aspect that there were all these methodologies and things that you could heal yourself. Using, and that was a strong interest of mine and led to a phenomenal career. So you're one of my mentors, and I appreciate you taking the time. And I'm looking forward to catching up with you over tea in the very short order. And for all our listeners, dive into Udo's work. It's timeless, it's effective, and it works.
I'll say one more thing is, people always say, well, where can I get in touch with you? And I always tell them that's the wrong question, because you need to get in touch with yourself.
Well said.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you for listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it, please like and share it. If you have any comments, we'd love to hear them. And of course, we'll see you again on the Awesome Health Podcast. Thank you for joining us.
The Bioptimizer mission is to help more of the world fix their digestion at a core level. The truth is, your digestion is only as good as your enzyme levels. Imagine trying to build a house with a tree. It's impossible. You need to chop the tree down into small pieces. Similarly, in order for your food to be used by your body, it must be broken down into a bioavailable form. And that's what enzymes do, converting protein into amino acids, fats into specific fatty acids, and carbohydrates into usable energy units. We start out with an abundance of enzymes, and that's why kids can digest just about anything really quickly. The thing is cooking food kills enzymes, as they cannot survive at temperatures above 118 degrees. So years of this ends up depleting our bodies and leads to weak digestion. Taking digestive enzymes like masszymes, which has an incredibly high level of protease for digesting protein, as well as other critical enzymes like lipase, amylase, and others, is a total game changer. Suddenly, you strengthen your digestion, eliminate gas and bloating, boost metabolism, and multiply your energy. Most importantly, you fix your digestion at a core level. To get started with Masszymes and to save 10% on your first order, go to masszymes.com. That's masszymes.com, and use the code MASS10, MASS10.
Thank you for listening to the Bioptimizers Awesome Health Podcast. You can find more information at bioptimizers.com.